If we're trusting the financial wisdom of the federal government, the federal government has already rated this project not recommended. So I'd say the first step is, let's improve the finances on the project, let's get the numbers in line and talk about them openly. And we aren't doing that. They have numbers they aren't releasing. They won't prepare the expenditure plan on time. It just doesn't wash. I heard him say one phrase, there'll be a surplus. The last time I heard the phrase, there'll be a surplus with the BART line, was the San Francisco extension. That surplus, oddly enough, was used as collateral for a loan from the Warm Springs extension. So when you're saying there's absolutely no reason to believe that the Warm Springs extension might be underfunded, I don't think that loan's going to be repaid with the giant deficits that the San Francisco BART extension currently has. And when those loans aren't repaid, well, now we've got the funding gap on Warm Springs that the author of the question asked about.
Bob?
Greg mentioned that the Federal Transit Administration recommended no-go on, and he's right. You know why? And they recommended that because we couldn't identify a funding source for the maintenance operations of the system. So he's giving you kind of half of the story. Guess what? Now we've identified it. The Federal Transit Administration loves what we're doing, and we can't go forward without their approval. They also argued about ridership. Now the federal government, working with the new general manager, Mike Burns, agree in ridership. It's part of the formula for adjusting and calculating the costs and the revenue side of this. So when he tells you that in 2004, 2005, the Federal Transit Administration said no, well, he's right. He's not finishing the story. Now they're very excited about it because we haven't identified a revenue source. We need to pass that down.
The other reason the FTA mentioned when they said not recommended was that VTA's revenue projections were unrealistic, which is one of the reasons for the ACOM study. And VTA got the news back from ACOM that their revenue projections of 10 times the historic rate in terms of real per capita sales tax revenue were ridiculous, which is true. And they revised their estimates, which is great. It's now very respectable, 3.67%. And they have not incorporated that into their plans because the news is really bad. When you go from 4.75% over 30 years to 3.67, this whole math thing, I talk too much numbers, well, you just lost a few $1 billion that you've got to make up. And the numbers don't wash. And they still don't wash. And I think we deserve to see the real numbers and not Bob's word that someone talked to somebody at FTA and they say it's okay, but we can't tell you what the numbers are. And if the numbers are good, let's see the numbers.
All right, this question is for Greg. Since the first estimate, the cost of building BART has gone from $4.7 billion to $6 billion. How much more could it go up until 2017, and how will it be paid for?
First is it may be beyond 2017, whether or not this passes. They're going to start by canceling other projects because they have a meeting in December to decide what else they're going to do. And San Jose has been a strong supporter of this project. It's on the city council level. They're going to start canceling all the electrification in Dumbarton Rail and downtown East Valley. And when you add those up, you get to $1 billion, which is not enough. And then you start pushing back the schedule, which helps some. But so I think their goal would either be to push back the schedule far enough to make up the money, which would be quite a ways, or they will truncate to Berryessa. And they face that whether or not this passes. This is why, instead of having this meeting in December, and that's the topic in December, and the meeting was originally supposed to be held in July of 2006, was when we were supposed to start discussing this. And they put it off, and they put it off, and they put it off, and they're still putting it off. It's time we have this discussion, and after we work out the financing details, then we can talk about it. But let's figure out what the plan is first, and we don't have a plan.
If you're going to judge an agency or a business on what the future is going to be, look at the track record. VTA has been involved in building major capital projects for 20 years, and they've done it on time and on budget. So there really is no basis for Greg to now argue that they're going to be inefficient and incompetent coming to build this. It's simply not a fair argument based on VTA's record. So we have to move forward on that. What we're looking at doing is we need to find a way to get people on a rail system through the heaviest traveled corridor in Silicon Valley. We can debate edges, we can complain about the gray area. But 40 years ago, the leaders in Santa Clara County did the same thing. And they denied BART coming down to Santa Clara County, and we paid dearly for that mistake. We cannot sit here and argue around the edges and forecast dire scenarios. We have a chance, and we have the funding now to build a major capital project from an agency that has a great track record. Why in the world would we not do this?
Okay. Greg, would you like to respond?
Yeah, I'm not coming up with things here, and we've already agreed that the $3.7 billion promise of 2000 is now $6.1 billion. So when I'm talking about we're going to have cost overruns, we've gone, what's that, $2.4 billion right there. We haven't broken ground, and that's already happened, that we've had that much cost overrun. And that's not all inflation. Now you're going to say inflation, I'll give you $750 million of it is inflation, the rest is 1.7 or whatever it works out to cost overrun. Roy Nakatagawa has put the cost of this extension, and he has seen a lot of BART extensions. He was on the BART board for years. He put the cost at $8 to $10 billion. And I think that is a fair estimate. And I don't know where they're going to get the money for the stated cost, let alone the cost overruns.
You have a response?
They did a cost estimate in 2005. It was $4.7 billion to extend the 16-mile extension. And now they're looking at $6.1 billion. That's based on inflation. And frankly, construction costs, materials have gone up. And those are the numbers that VTA is working with Federal Transit Administration on how they're going to build this. The financial plan is something that will be vetted and approved. So I think we've talked about this ad nauseum. We have the construction funding. We're going to get an additional $1 billion, $750 million from the federal government, and $240 million from the state government to build this. The federal state government's already given us $400 million to do the engineering design. And remember, they did an analysis of all the options and alternatives. 11 different options and alternatives. And BART, through this corridor, was the best. The second alternative, the second best alternative, had 50% ridership. So this is a well-studied, well-planned, something we need to do.
All right, Bob, this is for you. How is it decided where the 6 stations will be located? And to get commuters out of their cars, what comprehensive transit plans will be needed to connect the different systems?
Well, again, I'll revert back to the 2001 study. They did an independent study of all the alternates and the options it had on building this corridor, so they picked the best one. So that's how they came up with it. It's 6 BART stations that we do. In terms of what's great about this linking BART down to Santa Clara County is that once that's finished, 90% of people living in Santa Clara will be 3 miles from a BART station, Caltrains, or a light rail. 80% will be within 2 miles. Now, if you consider bus feeding in to these systems, it really provides us a mobile community. Maybe not as good as some of the heavily dense major cities, but when we're looking at 400,000 new residents, we're looking at a way to keep Silicon Valley the leader of innovation. We need this rail system to get people around. We've got to get people out of their cars, and by building the first-class transit system through that 80, 86, 80 corridor, we're having a great opportunity to do it.